Welcome to a brand new perspective. It's the monthly mother-daughter download you don't want to miss.
Welcome to this episode of A Brand New Perspective. I'm your co-host, Linda Bethea.
And I'm your other co-host, Finley.
And we're here to talk about all things marketing, motherhood, and mental health. So if you're interested in a perspective on those from a CMO and mom
And her teenage daughter,
you're in the right place. But first, this is our first episode, and I'm really excited, Finley, to kick this off during Women's History Month, because I feel like we talk a lot about how important it is for women to have a platform and have a voice, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Since it is our first episode, we should probably explain why we're here and how we got into podcasting. Yeah. So I think it actually started a couple of years ago. I had a work trip to Colorado. I was going to go speak on stage at a Brand Innovators event. And shout out to Brand Innovators. They've built an amazing marketing community. Really, really recommend if you're a marketer to look into that. But my childcare fell through at the last minute, and so you had to join me on the trip.
Yeah.
And I remember we were sitting at LaGuardia Airport, and you turned to me and you were like, wait, why are you going to Colorado?
I was really confused.
Anyway. And so I said, well, I'm actually going to speak at this Brand Innovators conference about marketing to Gen Z. And it was kind of this aha moment, because I was like, wait a sec, I'm going to speak about marketing to Gen Z, but you're actually Gen Z. And so I was like, hey, why don't you come join me on stage tomorrow and you can talk about it too? Yeah. Do you remember what went through your mind when I asked you that?
I was excited, but I was also kind of nervous. It came out of nowhere. I remember we were literally sitting in the chairs at the LaGuardia Airport after getting Dunkin'. So it was
Always.
it was just a very chill moment. And then you're like, hey, want to come speak on stage with me? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, sounds great. But I was definitely nervous because I had no idea what I was in for. But I'm so glad I did it.
That's one of the things I love about you is you're just game to try new
Yeah.
things, even if they are out of the blue. And a huge thank you to Ariel Russo for saying yes to putting you on stage.
Yeah.
And Jeff Matthews, who was an amazing
Our
moderator.
moderator.
And he did such a great job of helping you be comfortable with your first speaking opportunity. And you crushed it. Nobody would have known you were nervous. You owned that stage, and you were just so natural and comfortable in your presence on stage. And it was definitely a proud mom moment.
It was definitely helpful. Everybody at the event was so welcoming and nice, because I also know some of your coworkers were there who I adore, and they were just so, I was nervous to be the only teenager speaking there, but they didn't act any differently towards me. If anything, they were more interested, which was really great.
Well, I remember when you got off stage and people swarmed you to ask you questions, and afterwards you were like, Mom, no one wanted to talk to you. They only wanted to talk to me. And that was so humbling. But it was also another light bulb moment, because I was like, hey, I travel the world talking to people about marketing to Gen Z, what it's like to be a working mom. And what I realized is the audience only gets to hear my perspective.
Yeah.
They never actually get to hear the perspective of the Gen Z or the children of those working parents. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So we started talking about that, and it's like, hey, what if we created a platform, a podcast, to share both perspectives, the perspectives from a chief marketing officer and mom, and the perspective from
teenager,
and bring those perspectives together. That would be offering something new to the world. So here we are, our first podcast episode. Welcome. But as we mentioned earlier, it is Women's History Month, right?
Yes.
We're about to wrap up Women's History Month. And it's interesting because I feel like there's a day in a month for everything, right?
Donut Day.
Donut Day. We love Donut Day.
We celebrate all the fun little holidays. We just celebrated Pie Day.
Yes, we love Pie Day, National Pancake Day.
Oh, yeah.
That's another good one. You missed this, although I think you celebrate this every day. National Nap Day.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a favorite of yours. And then there's a month for everything, right?
Yeah.
There's Pride Month, there's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think we need an entire month to celebrate women?
I think it's definitely important to have a month to recognize women, but at the same time, I wish we didn't need to have a month in the first place. And that's the same for everything. I just wish that there never became a need for it in the first place, and that everybody just was very recognizing all the time and not having to designate a specific month. Because they're very important, they bring a lot of awareness, but the fact that we need them in the first place is a little hard to wrap my head around, because I just wish we didn't need to have them, that everybody could just recognize it all the time for everybody.
I think that's an interesting perspective, because the marketer in me loves having a designated month
Yeah.
where we can do all of the great campaigns around women, which I think is really important to put women in the spotlight.
Definitely.
And so the marketer in me loves it. The woman in me cringes a little bit
Yeah.
because I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't want a performative post or campaign celebrating me. I want you to treat me fairly year round.
Yeah.
Pay me what I'm worth. Pay me the same as you're paying my male coworkers. I'd much rather have that than have a month dedicated to celebrating me.
Yeah, and I think it's important because it gives women a platform and it does bring a lot of like light onto women, which is great. But it needs to be that way year round.
Exactly.
Not just during March.
Yeah. So I'm interested from your perspective because you are the, younger generation. Do you feel like things have changed and that women in your generation have equal rights?
We've definitely come a long way, and I know a lot more women in my generation, they're not afraid to speak out and speak up for themselves. I know in general my generation's also just a very open to new ideas and very inclusive, but I think just in general there's still a long way to go. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we got the right to vote, which is crazy because I'm going to be voting in 2 years, which is crazy to think. Which is crazy to think. But there's definitely still a long way to go, even if it's not like a big, outstanding moment that speaks to me. It's like the little things that I kind of notice where I'm like, yeah, that can be worked on.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, still systemic
Yeah,
issues.
it's that.
Right, to your point, we didn't get the right to vote until,
Recently.
recent history. Women couldn't have a credit card or take out a loan without a male co-signer until recently. Like, people think these things are in the ancient past, and they're not. And there's actually legislation being proposed today that would reduce some of our rights. So that's really concerning to me.
Yeah.
But what makes me hopeful is you and your generation. The fact that you will have the right to vote in 2 years and can make a difference. And I see people in, I would say, your generation, the generation above you, really speaking out and making a difference. So I'd love to know, are there any women that inspire you that you look up to?
Definitely. I was a gymnast for a long time until I got injured.
I broke her back,
yeah.
and I made her quit gymnastics, which she still hasn't forgiven me for. But I think she will when she's able to walk in 20 years.
I do miss it, but yeah, I mean, my back could not take it anymore. So a lot of the women I look up to are gymnasts. I think Caitlin Ohashi, she was a USA gymnast, and she also competed at UCLA. There's so many great gymnasts that I look up to, but especially Simone Biles, Caitlin Ohashi, Jordan Childs, because I think they've all really spoken up for themselves and taken the role of being a woman, especially in sports. Simone Biles is arguably one of the best athletes of all time. Not even just in the sport of gymnastics, but she is such an incredible human being. And the moment that sticks out to me is at the Olympics. And she took a step back for her mental health. And I think it just spoke volume because everybody was expecting her to be perfect all the time. And she was like, hey, no, I am a great gymnast, but I'm also human. And I do need to take time for myself. And I think that was just a moment that I've looked up to from her because I also struggle with mental health, as everybody does sometimes, but I really looked up to her and I was like, wow, like she made it feel like it's okay to do that.
A few things you said that I love about that. First of all, you said she's one of the greatest athletes of all time.
She's incredible.
And I hate when people say, well, she's the greatest female athlete of all time. It's like, no, full stop. She is the greatest athlete of all time.
I'd put her up there with Michael Phelps, honestly.
I would even put her above. She fundamentally changed the sport. She brought that sport to new levels and performed moves that didn't exist and are now named after her.
Yeah.
Like somebody that's had such a lasting impact on the fundamentals, I think is absolutely the greatest athlete of all time. And then to your point, there's so much pressure on athletes in general, but I do think on female athletes that pressure's felt even more. And the fact that she was able to listen to her body, listen to her mind, put herself first and do what was right for her versus feeding into the expectations of her teammates maybe, or her coach, or the people around her, or just, America in general, and do the right thing, I think makes her such an incredible role model. And I see that with other athletes at that level. You mentioned Jordan Childs. I had the opportunity to work with her in a marketing campaign featuring female athletes, and meeting her was incredible because she's such a real person.
Yeah.
She she knows who she is, and she's very authentic and talks very openly about the struggles with mental health and the pressures of being, a public figure. And that's another thing I love about your generation is there's no stigma anymore around that. You mentioned everybody's struggling with something, and I love that you are more open about it and you're talking about it, because I think that's such an important step forward. One, to getting help, obviously, but two, to helping other people and making people realize like you're not alone in going through those struggles. And I think as women, a lot of times we internalize things, right? We put on a brave face and we pretend that we're happy and everything's fine, when inside it's like massive chaos and turmoil, right?
Yeah.
But then somebody's like, oh, how are you doing? You're like, I'm great.
It's going great. Everything's perfect.
Yep. And so I do think, you in particular are great about that. Like, you're such a good communicator, which I really appreciate. But your generation in general is much more open to discussing those hard topics and what that means to be a woman.
Yeah. I also think, honestly, that part of the reason we're so open to it is because of social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, because there are so many influencers who blow up on TikTok for being like real, like the people who do like a get ready with me's or a day in my life, and they're just showing how they go about their everyday, and sometimes they're just real. Like, I was watching one the other day and she was like, yeah, I woke up at noon, I missed my alarm, but then I went to the gym and then I came home and I did some work and I went to bed. And I was just like, that's so relatable. And when people openly talk about their mental health struggles on the internet, it really emphasizes that you're not alone in that struggle. And there's even creators that are specifically have built their platform around, hey, I'm a real person and I'm advocating for everybody else to feel okay with being their authentic self. And I think that's part of the reason.
Social media is a good thing?
I mean, there's definitely some parts where social media is fake, but there is a lot of it that has been really great and I think has been really eye-opening for my generation.
So that's a different
pros and
perspective,
cons.
right? Because my generation talks about the evils of social media and how it's created the anxious generation.
I mean, there's pros and cons in everything. I mean, I know my screen time is too high, but I think there's enough pros that you can keep it there.
So do you think there should be limits on social media, like either from the government, right? So restricting social media for children under a certain age, or from parents restricting the amount of time their kids spend on social
me and
media?
her get into some squabbles about my screen time.
One of our biggest.
As much as I wish I didn't have them, sometimes I am glad I do have them, which surprising I say that.
This on video. This is recorded.
I know. Surprising I have this. But, like, it's also just how I connect with people. Like, your generation, I feel like, doesn't use Snapchat as much.
No.
Like, or if at all.
No, I don't.
And, like, that's my main communication source with a lot of my friends. So I can feel very disconnected when I'm not on my phone. But I think it's important to have them, but it's also very individualized. Like, there are some people who just aren't on their phone as much in my generation, so they might not need the limits. I have ADHD, and I get distracted so easily. And my phone is very distracting for me. So especially, like, when I'm doing like homework or I'm doing other stuff that needs my full attention, it's good for me to not have access to it. So I'm glad I have the limits, and I also sometimes hate it.
Yeah. Although I do think you raise a good point when we do get into our squabbles about that, is in 2 years, you'll be off to college. And I won't be there to set limits and make sure that you're studying instead of scrolling endlessly on social media. And so there is a balance of you learning how to set limits yourself.
I think that's important. I just got a new app on my phone where we can control the limits, and I like it because it's made me more mindful of how much time I'm spending. I pick how much time I want to give myself for the whole day, and I select what apps are my problem apps. So for mine, it's like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, basically all of my social media platforms. And then you pick how much time you want to use. So I'll say use 10 minutes. And I think that makes me a lot more mindful versus when I'm just scrolling and I don't know how much time has passed. Versus when I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes of my time here. And then it'll shut off after the 5 minutes. And I like that. It's made me a lot more mindful of how much time I'm spending on my phone, which I think is good. Because I've always known I've had too much of a high screen time, but I don't think I realized how much time I was truly spending on it until I got this app.
Yeah, the time suck is real.
It's so real.
But I've also noticed a generational difference in how you and your friends use social media versus how my friends and I use social media, specifically around how to communicate. My friends and I use group text messages or group WhatsApp messages. You and your friends communicate mostly through Snapchat.
I think it's also interesting, even like some of my friends who are still teenagers, I have a couple friends who are freshmen and sophomores in college, And I communicate with those people mainly on text and on call. And I think it's interesting because they're still teenagers, but even just a couple years of difference does really show versus my friends who are my age. A lot of them, it's always on Snapchat. My main communication source with them is on Snapchat.
I think that's really interesting. And for me, the first social media app I was exposed to was Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
Right? But one of my friends the other day called me old for scrolling on Facebook.
Right? I kind of took offense to that because I'm also an avid Facebook user, which can be kind of shocking considering I'm young, but I do love my Facebook groups.
I think you just love social media in general.
No, I love Facebook though. Facebook is so fun.
It is different.
It's different than the other ones, which is why I like it.
Unique point of difference.
Yeah,
versus...
it's why I like it. But I kind of was a little offended because then I was like, "Am I old? Like I'm not old."
You are an old soul. I think you're more mature, I think, than a lot of your peers. You definitely have your moments, don't get me wrong. But in general, I do think you're more mature, so it doesn't surprise me that you appreciate Facebook.
I love a good Facebook scroll.
Yes. But at your heart, you are Gen Z.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we started this podcast. And so one of the segments that we're going to do in each episode is called Cool or Cringe, which she has already told me is very cringe, and I need to change the name. But I thought it would be cool to talk about what's hot in the world of marketing, motherhood, and mental health right now and get perspective on whether it is cool or cringe.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So you ready for this?
This is hurting my soul a little bit for the section to be called that, but let's continue.
Would you rather call it gas or trash?
Oh no. Oh.
Sus or bus? I know all the Gen
we're gonna
Z
continue.
lingo.
We're just gonna move on.
All right, cool or cringe. Okay. Let's start with a campaign that's getting a lot of headlines right now, which is featuring a celebrity that I think is targeting Gen Z, and it's Kendall Jenner.
Oh, Devil Wears Prada.
Yes.
Yep.
So we just watched Devil Wears Prada in anticipation of the sequel
I'm so
coming
excited.
out. So excited for that. But Devil Wears Prada has partnered with L'Oreal on a Devil Wears Prada collaboration, which I think is super smart, right? I think a lot of brands are looking to partner with different movie and entertainment properties after the success of Barbie. And what brands were able to do with that. That was huge, and I think completely changed the game. And so people are seeing Devil Wears Prada as another potential moment in pop culture where it can drive huge awareness and purchase for brands. So L'Oreal's doing a collab, but they hired Kendall Jenner to be the star of the campaign. And it's set in a fictional runway magazine world where Kendall Jenner's working there and using some of the L'Oreal products. Cool or cringe?
I don't know. Kendall Jenner, is it Keeping Up with the Kardashians? Is that what the show is? Because I don't know. I don't watch a ton of reality TV, but it's Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I'm the reality TV
She's the
junkie in this relationship.
I don't watch a ton, so I haven't actually seen Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but she has been pretty popular. I don't follow along with her, but I do know who she is. I think it's kind of cool that even for me, who doesn't follow everything that she does, I still know who she is. She's still very relevant to me, and I think a lot of people in my generation know her. I think it's interesting that they chose L'Oreal and Kendall Jenner to do Devil Wears Prada, because I think the whole premise of the movie is that it's a high fashion, expensive, very fancy runway versus L'Oreal's a drugstore, and then there's also Kendall Jenner who's super rich, and it's just an interesting mix. So I think it depends on how you look at it, but I think it's cool that the way that they're doing it and they're taking inspo from other movies like the Barbie movie.
So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, Gap. So Gap had a lot of success last summer. Yep.
Yes, the
and it was
milkshake
at
ad.
the time that another denim brand, American Eagle, was getting a lot of heat for their ad featuring Sydney Sweeney. So Gap came out with a much more inclusive take on denim marketing. And so they're building on that success, and now they're trying to market their sweats to Gen Z. Because your generation, I mean, case in point, wears sweats and pajamas every day. So very smart of them from a targeting standpoint to target sweats to Gen Z. And they're using young Miko in the campaign. Cool or cringe?
I am going to jump back to their jean ad from last summer. That might be one of my favorite ads of all time. And this is coming from somebody who watches a lot of ads, just coming from somebody who as a marketer, as a mom. And I think it's also sometimes hard because as a teenager, but also as somebody whose mom is a marketer, I look at it from both just somebody who's watching the ad and looking at it from a marketing perspective. But that ad blew up all over TikTok. It's a well-known song choice. Like, that might be one of the best ads I've seen in a long time. They did an incredible job with that campaign. So that was super cool. And it brought Gap back, basically. For the sweats, I haven't seen much of the sweats. I haven't seen that campaign.
Would you wear Gap sweats?
I'm not against wearing Gap sweats. I have so many pairs of sweatpants.
Yes, you do.
And I find brands that I like, and I wear the brands that I like, and I do wear more often just because of quality, but I'm also, and like some of those brands are more expensive because growing up as a privileged teenager in Westchester, I'm very lucky, but I'm also a gigantic TJ Maxx fan. I could spend
TJ
hours
Maxx.
into TJ Maxx or Marshalls, but like if I try on Gap sweatpants and they're comfy and they look cute, I'm gonna buy them.
Okay, so neither cool nor cringe.
Yeah, I think if they're comfy, I'll buy them, but.
Okay. All right, let's talk drinks. I feel like your generation is obsessed
I love my
with drinks, right?
We have like a whole, like, we need a fun drink in the morning.
Yes,
we need a fun drink for everything.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the drink you choose says a lot about you. There's badge value in a drink. Think about, are you a Starbucks or a Dunkin' girl, right? Are you a Red Bull or a Monster person, right? Like people are choosing drinks as a means of expression. Right? And then I think you've also seen an explosion of functional drinks, right? We have probiotic sodas, prebiotic sodas,
protein drinks now.
sodas, right? Like there's a drink for everything.
Literally everything.
And so curious, what are the cool or cringe drink brands for your generation, and how do you choose which drinks to consume?
I will definitely say I am somebody who always has a fun drink. I do still try and drink water, but I'm somebody who always has some sort of drink. I mean, case in point. But I think even now, just like normal soda like Pepsi and Coke, those type of brands are starting to be on the decline in my generation. Obviously, they're still huge corporations, but I know brands like Poppi, Olipop, Bloom, those are starting to rise. I'm a big Bloom drinker, but they have like soda, but it's not really a soda. It's like healthier, and I've been trying to be on my health journey recently, so I've been drinking those. I like their energy drinks too, which aren't healthy, but that's okay. But
another one of our big fights is over energy drinks.
These ones have less caffeine though, so these ones are technically healthier. It's kind of another reason I drink them. But I also think that they market more to my generation. Same with Alani. Alani's an energy drink brand. They have a lot of fun packaging that's super bright. But I like this new fun drink revolution. I really like it. I think it's so fun.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? You mentioned Pepsi and Coke. I worked at Pepsi for over 10 years, and you're right. They've seen a decline in traditional carbonated soft drinks and some of the older brands. And a lot of the competition is coming from smaller upstart brands like the Olipops of the world and Poppi, right? So Poppi
grew immensely. They've done great.
And they did it through building a following through influencers and social media.
Yeah.
And they were just acquired by Pepsi for billions of dollars. And I think it's fundamentally changed the way we as marketers think about connecting with your generation and building brands with your generation.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, do you follow influencers and trust influencers for recommendations in this space? How did you find out about Bloom or Alani or any of the fun drinks that you like?
I think I originally tried a Bloom because I saw an influencer drinking it on TikTok. And I'm so glad I tried it because there have been some like influencer things that I've tried and I just haven't loved, and other people rave about them. But I'm very glad I tried for the Bloom because this is really good. I own so much stuff from Bloom because Bloom also has greens drink mix. They have creatine. They have everything. But I trust influencers typically if they're influencers that I think are truly authentic. If they're somebody that I think I can tell when an influencer is being real. I watched a girl the other day and she spilled her coffee all over herself, and sometimes people would edit that out, but she kept it in. It's very relatable. And so when I see people like that influencer and they recommend products, I'm like, okay, these are real people who show their real selves on the internet, so I think I trust them more versus the creators that are entirely polished. Even Alex Earle, she's become a huge influencer who does have a more polished image, but the reason she started her platform is to discuss her journey on Accutane.
Right.
And that's a real thing. I've struggled with acne. I just got off of my second round of Accutane. But I trust a lot of her recommendations because she's just a very real person, in my opinion. She showed the things that she struggled with. And so when she's like, hey, I've tried this thing and it's pretty great, then I feel like I'm more likely to trust her because I relate to her since she's shown her real self on the internet.
Even though you know she's now getting paid by brands to do those posts.
Yeah. I also think there's a lot of influencers who won't work with brands if they don't actually like them, which I think is good. And I think that's a lot of influencers in my generation as well who are starting to do that more. Especially with a lot of clothing brands, a lot of influencers in my generation won't work with fast fashion clothing brands just because that's not something that they want to support. And so I think my generation's been very good about only working with brands that they genuinely like and would support outside of getting paid.
Values-based consumerism is a real thing for your generation.
Definitely.
That's good to know as a marketer.
Yeah.
I also think the other interesting thing about the fun drink space is it used to feel like a very masculine space, right? All the energy drinks were targeting men, right? You have Red Bull, you have Monster, you have Amp. And I feel like a lot of the newer entrants into that space lean more towards targeting women, right?
Definitely.
The Blooms, the Alanis of the world. So I think that's another interesting development in the drink space.
Definitely. I think going back to the packaging, the Alani packaging is so fun. It's very bright. Even this is like cutesy little packaging, which definitely like I've tried so many energy drink brands, but I do gravitate more towards these. When I first started drinking them, I would gravitate towards the super fun ones and like the
By
colorful
fun,
ones.
you mean what they look like.
What they look like,
The
yeah.
design.
So I'd gravitate towards the fun ones that are probably campaigned towards women. Bright colors and pretty packaging, but you can definitely tell a difference when you look at an Alani and a Monster, who they're more marketed for.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just read an article talking about the designs of drinks. Having spent my entire career in food and beverage, I've worked on a ton of packaging designs. And it used to be that you designed a package to stand out on shelf, because that was the primary place that people discovered your brand or purchased your brand. And now that has shifted and people are designing for the screen, because people now are discovering, to your point, it's watching an influencer on TikTok hold it up to the camera and drink it. And so it's more important that the design pops out on the screen than on a shelf, which I thought was a really interesting shift in how marketers and designers think about that.
Definitely. Even now when I go to like a CVS or I go to a grocery store and I get a drink, I'm not looking to see which one pops out on the shelf. I'm going to see, oh, I saw this one on a video the other day and I want to try it. I'm going to go look for that one.
So you walk in already intending to purchase a certain brand.
Yes, typically. Sometimes if I'm there and I'm already shopping, I'm like, oh, this kind of looks fun, I'll try it. But usually I already have in mind what I'm going to go get.
Very interesting. All right, let's finish this episode with a little education session around Gen Z lingo. I get a lot of questions from friends and coworkers around, what is this Gen Z slang? My kid comes home saying 6'7", 6'7". Like, I think we're finally past that trend, thank God. But the new word that you say all the time, that drives me crazy is gaff. So do you want to explain to our listeners what gaff is?
Gaff is G-A-F. That's how it's spelled, and we pronounce it gaff. But basically,
Can you use it in a sentence?
My hair looks super messy today, but I don't gaff. And basically, it means G-A-F stands for give a F. So that's become our new kind of thing. I know even some of my friends use it kind of interestingly, where they're like, I don't give a gaff. Which doesn't really make sense if you think about it. We shorten a lot of things. A lot of things we shorten. Even like over text, if I'm going to text low-key, I don't type the full word. I just do like L-O-W-K. We have a thing where we shorten everything.
I need a translator, a Google translator just
You really
for Gen
do. It is a
Z.
whole new language, honestly.
It is. I hear you and your friends talk, and I get about 50% of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so gaff, that's the new word, folks. Well, I hope you learned something new today and gained a brand new perspective. If you like what you hear, please tune in to our next episode.
And definitely follow. We have an Instagram, and we also discuss our podcast on our personal LinkedIn pages, which are just our names, so you can go find those there. But make sure to follow if you want to find out when our next episode is.
Thanks for listening to this episode of A Brand New Perspective.